When I first heard the news last Friday, my first thought wasn't about the government. It wasn't about Anthropic. My first thought was, how much is that DGX Spark again? And how does it compare to the M5 exactly? I want to tell you why that was my first instinct and what it means to anyone who's building with AI right now. Last Friday at 5:21 p.m. Eastern, a government directive arrived at Anthropic's offices. By the end of the day, the world's most capable AI model was gone. For everyone. No warning, no contractual guarantee, what people in the infrastructure world call an SLA. It was gone for whatever you built on top of. Thursday it was there. Friday night, it was gone. That's what happened. Now here's what it means. Now I want to read through some of the detail of what happened because I want to get them correct. June 9th, Anthropic launches Claude Fable 5. Independent benchmarks, which are standardized tests that measure how capable a model is at like reasoning, coding, complex tasks, it immediately ranked Fable 5 as the most capable AI model publicly available. Best in class. Then, 3 days later, June 12th, at 5:21 p.m. Eastern, a directive arrives. The U.S. government, citing National Security Authority, orders Anthropic to suspend access to any foreign national, inside or outside of the U.S. And that includes some of Anthropic's own foreign national employees. Anthropic's problem? No clean way to enforce that foreign nationals only could not access the model. So they shut it down for everyone. All customers worldwide. No warning pushed to users. You only found out, like I did, when you went to try to use it. The stated rationale for this? A jailbreak. A method of prompting the model to read a code base and identify software vulnerabilities. The government's concern? That capability could be used offensively by a foreign actor. These are legitimate concerns, and I understand the instinct, and I understand why Anthropic did what they did. How do you restrict a subset of users on a global platform? You can't. So you shut it down. Now here's the detail that most of the coverage isn't leading with or covering at all. Anthropic's response to the government was, the evidence received was verbal only, no written technical disclosure, no harmful result demonstrated. And, this matters, the same capability exists with GPT 5.5, which was not touched. And here's what also actually happened. Amazon's CEO, Andy Jassy, reportedly went to Treasury Secretary Bessent and told government officials that Amazon researchers had used Fable 5 to extract information usable in cyber attacks. Anthropic's own biggest investor triggered the directive that shut down Anthropic's flagship product. Read that again slowly. Anthropic's own biggest investor triggered the shutdown. And this didn't happen in a vacuum. In February, earlier this year, the Trump administration designated Anthropic as a supply chain risk to national security, barring Pentagon contractors from using their technology. So Anthropic was already in an active litigation over that. Then the Friday directive arrives 4 months later. And the week before that arrived, Dario Amodei, Anthropic's founder, published an essay calling for government AI oversight, but through transparent statutory processes grounded in technical facts. What he got instead was a letter at 5:21 p.m. Eastern on a Friday night with verbal evidence and no appeal. That is what happened. Now here is what it actually is. Most of this coverage is framing this as a government story, or an Anthropic story, or a Trump administration story. For me, it's neither of those. Those are the circumstances. The lesson is something older and more durable. You don't own what you rent. That principle has always been true. It's true for software. If you've built your business on a platform that changed its pricing, you felt it. If you built on an API that got deprecated, you felt it. If you built on a service that got acquired and the new owner had different priorities, you felt it. So I want to give you a fuller picture of how a workflow built on a closed AI model can disappear. And I want to step through 6 items that impact that workflow. So we talked about government action, right? One directive, no warning, gone on a Friday night. Pricing change. What costs X today can cost 3X next year. Deprecations. Models get retired. The tool you built on last year may not exist next year. Acquisition. The company gets bought, new owner, new terms. Vendor failure. Frontier AI is expensive. Not everyone will survive. And then terms of service. A use case permitted today may be restricted tomorrow. Government action is just the most dramatic version of a risk that was already there. Last Friday, it just became visible to everyone. Now, I said this isn't a government story, and comprehensively, it is not. But specifically, narrowly, it is a government story because something important just happened legally. AI has been treated as export controlled weapons adjacent technology. Not the chips. The US has been restricting chip exports for years. Not the data centers. The model access itself, the intelligence. The closest parallel in history to this is the crypto wars that happened in the 90s. The US government then classified encryption software as a munition. Netscape, if you remember that name, had to ship 2 versions of its browser, a full-strength domestic edition and a deliberately crippled international version. Phil Zimmermann, who wrote PGP, one of the first widely available encryption tools, faced federal criminal investigation for posting the software online. The government's theory, publishing software to the internet was an export of a weapon. And it took years of pressure, lawsuits, and eventually a Clinton administration executive order to roll those restrictions back. We are at the beginning of the same argument about AI, except the models are more capable, the geopolitics are more intense, and the pace is faster than anything the crypto wars had to contend with. When the US government calls a model export control, it's making a legal claim about the category this technology belongs to. That claim has consequences for every business building on these tools, not just today, going forward. That is a category shift, not a policy tweak. And it's the reason my first thought was about DGX Spark. So, how much is that DGX Spark again? Let me tell you what I actually mean by that question, because I don't mean everyone should go out and buy one. That's not the argument. The argument is when I heard about Friday, my mind went to what would it take to not be exposed to this? And the answer used to be a lot. Meaning running your own AI meant building your own infrastructure, training your own models, maintaining your own stack. That was a serious enterprise project, not available to a small business or an individual builder. Well, that has changed. There is a category of AI models called open weight models. A closed model is one where you access through someone else's server on their terms, under their control. An open weight model is one where the actual model, the underlying parameters, the intelligence itself, can be downloaded and run on hardware you own. Nobody can send a letter to your server at 5:21 p.m. on a Friday. The hardware to run these models is now real and purchasable. The DGX Spark, and let me just say, I'm not paid by NVIDIA, who owns DGX Spark. I don't know NVIDIA. I'm operating from specs and from thinking I have already been doing for months. The DGX Spark is a personal AI supercomputer. A single unit handles 200 billion parameters. 2 units together linked, 405 billion parameters. The best open weight models right now sit within about 15% of the best closed models on independent benchmarks. 3 years ago, that gap was 40 to 50%. Today, it's 15. In 6 months, it will be even smaller. The sovereign compute option is no longer theoretical. It's a product page. But here's the question I actually want you sitting with, because it's much more important than the hardware, which is, how much intelligence do you actually need? The assumption baked into almost every conversation that I hear is that more capability is always better. Chase the frontier. Use the best model. Stay current. But businesses don't optimize for maximum intelligence. They optimize for reliability, for cost, for availability, for predictability, the ability to plan around a tool that will be there next quarter. At some point, and I would argue we're crossed that point, a model is smart enough that ownership becomes more important than incremental performance. Smart enough and yours beats smartest and borrowed. If the thing you're renting is 15% better, but can disappear on a Friday night, and the thing you can own is 15% behind, but it's on your hardware in your office, which one is actually serving your business? That's not a rhetorical question. The answer genuinely depends on what you're building. But most people haven't asked it at all, because until last Friday, the disappearance scenario was abstract. It isn't abstract anymore. Not everyone's answer is to go buy a DGX Spark. Sovereignty isn't binary. It's a spectrum. And I want to lay out how I see it and give you a framework of how to think about it. So there's 4 levels. Level 1 is where most people are right now. A single cloud model, 1 API key, 1 vendor, maximum exposure. If that vendor has a problem, you have a problem. That's level 1. Level 2 is a multi-model redundancy. You use 2 or 3 different providers, so if one goes dark, you have a fallback. Still fully rented, but less fragile. This is where I am right now, by the way. In fact, if you looked over my shoulder at any given time when I'm heads down on my keyboard, you might see 4 different tabs open. ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok. And I have the Pro plan for all 4. plus token usage upcharges. That's me, level 2. Then there's level 3, which is open weight models running on cloud infrastructure that you control. Now, the model itself can be recalled. You've downloaded the weights. The infrastructure is still cloud, so there's some exposure, but the intelligence is portable. I'm not at level 3 yet. I understand it in principle, and I believe it works the way I'm understanding it. But if you stay with me on this journey, you'll see me get there real time. So that's level 3. Then there's level 4, which is where I'm headed. Local sovereign compute. You own the hardware, you own the model, you run it yourself. Maximum sovereignty. Every one of these levels is better than where most people are today. You don't have to jump to level 4 to take the lesson seriously. The question isn't which level is right for you now. The question is, do you know where you are? And is that where you want to be now that you know what last Friday looks like? Every serious business does supply chain risk assessment. You know which suppliers you're single sourced on. You know where your critical dependencies are. And you build redundancy where failure is unacceptable. AI is now on that list. It always has been. It's just that most people hadn't felt it yet. Last Friday, a lot of people felt it. The question I want to leave you with isn't about Anthropic or the government or what happens next in that story, because those details will move and fast. The question is, which model will still be available next Friday? Because the smartest model in the world and the most available model in the world is not always the same model. And for most of what you're actually trying to do, you need available a lot more than you need smartest. You don't own what you rent. That's always been true, and now you have proof. What you do with that is up to you. This is Signal. I'm Renny Atkins.